Chair recognizes the lady from Shelby 58 for explanation of bill and a motion thereon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm here today to present House Committee Sub to House Bill 470, legislation that seeks to protect children in Kentucky from irreparable damage. This substitute, as amended, prohibits access to gender transition services to those under the age of 18, specifically hormone and surgical treatments. I will go briefly through the bill section by section. Section 1 creates a new section of KRS Chapter 311 to define terms. Section 2 creates a new section of KRS 311 to state that the provisions of gender transition services to a person under the age of 18 years by a healthcare provider is unethical and unprofessional conduct, and that the provider is unfit to perform the duties and discharge the responsibilities of his or her occupation. The bill provides due process by directing that the disciplinary and hearing process of each licensing or certification board for medical professionals be used to investigate any report of provision of gender services having taken place for a person under the age of 18 years. The sub requires revocation of a provider's license and termination of public funding for any public employee if the provision of such services is confirmed. Section 3 creates a new section of KRS Chapter 311 to require that providers be jointly and severally liable for all damages and costs sustained for providing gender transition services or aiding and assisting a person under the age of 18 to consider or to obtain gender transition services. This bill provides a complete defense to any provider who has any type of complaint filed because of the provider's choice to refuse to provide gender transition services to a person under the age of 18 years. In Section 3, there are provisions for a cause of action for anyone who has been harmed by the parent or guardian of a person who has been harmed before the person attains the age of 18 years. This bill requires such an action be brought by the person harmed within 30 years of the person attaining the age of 18 years, or for the parent or guardian of the person harmed before the person turns 18 years. There's a provision that allows a cause of action to be brought by a parent or guardian of the person if the person or the provider dies before the expiration of the statute of limitations. Section 4 prohibits the use of public funds for gender transition services, prohibits a provider employed by the state, local, or county governments to include gender transition services. Section 5 permits the Attorney General to bring an action to enforce the provisions of the Act, and it also prohibits publicly employed health care providers from intervening in a legal proceeding challenging the provisions of this Act. Section 6 of the Act creates a new section of KRS Chapter 205 to prohibit Medicaid coverage of gender transition procedures for a child under the age of 18 years. Section 7 creates a new section of Subtitle 12 of KRS Chapter 304 to establish liability for private insurance companies that elect to cover gender transition procedures for persons under the age of 18 years. Section 8 amends KRS 18A.225 to prohibit a fully insured benefit plan or self-insured plan for public employees from covering gender transition services for a person under the age of 18 years. Section 9 amends KRS 454.210 It amends the Kentucky's long-arm statute to permit a court to exercise personal jurisdiction over a person who acts directly or by an agent to harm a child under the age of 18 years through gender transition services. Section 10 amends KRS 141.039 to require that corporate income related to the provision of gender transition services to a person under the age of 18 years be added to the net income. Section 11 amends KRS 213.121 to prohibit a name change on vital statistic documents if the purpose is to assist a person under the age of 18 years with a gender transition. Section 12 amends KRS 401.020 to prohibit a name change by a court if the purpose is to assist a person under the age of 18 with a gender transition. That section also requires detained juveniles to be classified only as being the biological state of being male or female, as defined in the Act. Section 14 is a severability clause, and Chapter 15 allows the Act to be cited as the Do No Harm Act. Excuse me. Mr. Speaker, I move passage of House Bill 470 as amended by committee sub. Oh, what am I supposed to do?
Lady from Shelby.
I'm sorry.
We
I'm
need
sorry.
to report
Sorry,
and
I need to adopt it. I need to ask the clerk to report House Committee substitute to House Bill 470.
Clerk, please report.
House Committee Substitute 1 to House Bill 470.
Lady from Shelby.
Mr. Speaker, I move adoption of the committee substitute to House Bill 470.
Motion is for the adoption of the committee substitute. To recognize the lady from Campbell.
I'll wait for this.
Motion is for the adoption of House Committee Substitute 1. Is there any discussion on the committee substitute? Seeing none, those in favor signify by voting aye. Those opposed, nay. House Committee Substitute 1 is adopted. Lady from Shelby.
Mr. Speaker, I now move the passage of House Bill 470 as adopted, as amended by the House Committee sub.